Chapter 50. In the Lu Pusui Pavilion, they vie with each other in pairing verses on the scenery. In the Nuanxiang village, they compose in beautiful style riddles for the spring lanterns. But to continue, we should, after all, Pao-ch'ai suggested, make some distinction as to order. Let me write out what's needful. After uttering this proposal, she urged everyone to draw lots and determine the precedence. The first one to draw was LiCh'i. After her, a list of the respective names was made in the order in which they came out. Well, in that case, Lady Feng rejoined, "I'll also give a top line." The whole party laughed in chorus. "It will be ever so much better like this," they said. Pao-ch'ai supplied above the old laborer of Tao Hsiang the word Feng, whereupon Li-wan went on to explain the theme to her. "You mustn't poke fun at me," Lady Feng smiled after considerable reflection. "I've only managed to get a course line. It consists of 5 words. As for the rest, I have no idea how to manage them."
The coarser the language, the better it is. One and all laughed.
"Out with it. You can then go and attend to your legitimate business." "I fancy," Lady Feng observed, "that when it snows, there's bound to be northerly wind. For last night, I heard the wind blow from the north the whole night long. I've got a line. It's the whole night long, the northern line was high. But whether it will do or not, I am not going to worry my mind about it."
One and all, upon hearing this, exchanged looks.
"This line is, it's true, of course," they smiled, "and gives no insight into what comes below, but it's just the kind of opening that would be used by such as understand versification. It's not only good, but it will afford to those who come after you inexhaustible scope for writing. In fact, line will take the lead, so old laborer of Xiang, be quick and indite some more to tag on below." Lady Feng, sister-in-law, Lai, and King Air had then another couple of glasses, after which each went her own way. During this while, Li-wan wrote down, "The whole night long the northern wind was high," and then she herself subjoined the antithetical couplet. "The door I ope, and lo, the flakes of snow are still tossed by the wind and drop into the slush. Oh, what a pity they're so purely white," Xiang-yün recited. "All over the ground is spread. Alas, this bright, refulgent gem, but with an aim, for it is meant dry herbage to revive." Jian-shin said, "Without design, the dying sprouts of grain it nutrifies. But in the villages, the price of mellow wine doth rise." LiCh'i added, "In a good year, grain in the house is plentiful. The bulrush moves, and the ash issues from the tube." Li-wan continued, "What time spring comes, the handle of the dipper turns. The bleaky hills have long ago their verdure lost." Chou-yen proceeded, "On a frost-covered stream, no tide can ever rise. Easy the snow hangs on the sparse-leaved willow twigs." Hsiang-yün pursued, "Hard 'tis for snow to pile on broken plantain leaves. The coal, musk, scented, burns in the precious tripod." Pao-ch'in recited, "The embroidered sleeve enwraps the golden sable in its folds. The snow transcends the mirror by the window in luster." Pao-yü suggested, "The fragrant pepper clings unto the wall. The side wind still and whistling gusts doth blow." "Hey!" you added, "A quiet dream becomes a cheerless thing. Where is the fife with plum bloom painted on?"
Pao-ch'ai continued, "In whose household is there a flute made of green jade?"
"The fish fears lest the earth from its axis might drop. I'll go and see that. The wine is warm for you people," Li-wan smiled. But when Pao-ch'ai told Pao-ch'in to connect some lines, she caught sight of Hsiang-yün rise to her feet and put in, "What time the dragon wages war, the clouds dispel. Back to the wild shore turns the man with single skull." Pao-ch'in thereupon again appended the couplet. The old man hums his lines, and with his whip he points at the Pa Bridge. Fur coats are out of pity on the troops at the frontiers bestowed. But would Hsiang-yün allow anyone to have a say?
The others could not besides come up to her in quickness of wit, so that, while their eyes were fixed on her, she with eyebrows uplifted and figure outstretched proceeded to say, "More cotton coats confer forbear in memory of imperial serf."
The rugged, barbarous lands are on account of snow, with dangers fraught. Pao-ch'ai praised the verses again and again, and next contributed the distich. The twigs and branches live in fear of being tossed about. With what whiteness and the three-step the flakes of snow descend. You guys have joined the lines. The snow as nimbly falls as moves the waist of the Sui man when brandishing a sword. The tender leaves of tea, so acrid to the taste, have just been newly brewed and tried. As she recited this couplet, she gave Pao-yü a shove and urged him to go on. Pao-yü was, at the moment, enjoying the intense pleasure of watching the three girls Pao-ch'ai, Pao-ch'in, and Tai-yü make a joint onslaught on Hsiang-yün, so that he had of course not given his mind to tagging any antithetical verses. But when he now felt Tai-yü push him, he at length chimed in with, "The fir is the sole tree which is decreed forever to subsist. The wild goose follows in the mud the prints and traces of its steps." Pao-ch'in took up the clue, adding, "In the forest, the axe of the woodcutter may be times be heard. With snow-covered contours, 1,000 peaks their heads jut in the air." Hsiang-yün with alacrity and verses, the whole way torturous winds like a coiled snake. The flowers have felt the cold and ceased to bud. And her companions again with eulogized their fine diction. Fittingly continued, could hear the beauteous snow drag the nipping of frost. In the deep court, the shivering birds are startled by. You'd happened to be feeling thirsty and was hurriedly swallowing a cup of tea when her turn was at once snatched by Chou-yen, who gave out the lies on the bare mountain wails the old man Hsiang. The snow covers the steps both high and low. Hsiang-yün immediately put away the teacup and added, "On the pond's surface it allows itself to float. At the first blush of dawn with effulgence it shines." You recited with alacrity the couplet, "In confused flakes it ceaseless falls the whole night long."
Trough one forgets that it implies 3 feet of cold.
Hsiang-yün hastened to smilingly interpose with the distich. "Its auspicious descent dispels the emperor's grief. There lies one frozen stiff, but who asked him a word?" Pao-ch'in too speedily put on a smile and added, "Glad is the proud wayfarer when he's pressed to drink. Snapped is the weaving belt in the heavenly machine." Hsiang-yün once again eagerly quoted the line, "In the seaside market is lost a silk kerchief." But LiCh'i, you would not let her continue, and taking up the thread, she forthwith said, "With quiet silence it enshrouds the raised kiosk." Yün vehemently gave the antithetical verse. "The utter poor clings to his pannier and his bowl." Pao-ch'in too would not give in as a favor to anyone. So hastily she exclaims, "The water meant to brew the tea with gently bubbles up." Yün saw how excited they were getting, and she thought it naturally great fun.
Laughing, she eagerly gave out,
"When wine is boiled with leaves, it's not easy to burn." He also smiled while suggesting, "The broom with which the bonds speedeth the hill is sunk in snow." And she smilingly cried, "The young lad takes away the lute and turned in snow." He laughed to such a degree that she was bent in two, and she muttered a line with such rapidity that one and all inquired of her, "What are you after all saying? In the stone tower leisurely sleeps the stork." Yin repeated.
You clasped her breast, so convulsed was she with laughter.
With loud voice she bawled out, "The embroidered carpet warms the affectionate cat." Pao-ch'in quickly, again laughingly, exclaimed, "Inside Celine's cave low, roll the silvery waves." Hsiang-yün added with eager haste, "Within the city walls at eve was hid a purple flag." Tai-yü with alacrity continued with a smile, "The fragrant sweet which penetrates into the plums is good to eat." Pao-ch'ai smiled. What a fine wine, she ejaculated, after which she hastened to complete the couplet by saying, the drops from the bamboo are meet when one is drunk to mix with wine. Oh, Chin likewise made haste to add, betimes the hymeneal girdle it moistens. Hsiang-yün eagerly paired it with, off, it freezeth on the kingfisher shoes. Tai-yü, you once more exclaimed with vehemence. No wind doth blow, but yet there is a rush. Pao-ch'in promptly also smiled and strung on, no rain low falls, but still a patter's heard. Hsiang-yün was leaning over, indulging in such merriment that she was quite doubled up in two. But everybody else had realized that the trio was struggling for mastery. So, without attempting to versify, they kept their gaze fixed on them and gave way to laughter. Tai, you gave her another push to try and induce her to go on. Do you also sometimes come to your wits' ends?
And run to the end of your tether? She went on to say.
I'd like to see what other stuff and nonsense you can come out with. And however, simply fell forward on Pao-ch'ai's lap and laughed incessantly. If you've had any gumption about you, Pao, she exclaimed, shoving her up, take the second rhymes under his eye and exhaust them all, and I'll then bend the knee to you. It isn't as if I were writing verses, Hsiang, and laughed, rising to her feet.
It's really as if I were fighting for very
Life. It's for you to come out with something, they all cried with a laugh. Chen had long ago determined in her mind that there could be no other antithetical sentences that she herself could possibly propose, and she forthwith set to work to copy out the verses. But as she passed the remark, they haven't as yet been brought to a proper close. Li-Wen took up the clue as soon as she caught her words and added the sentiment. My wish is to record this morning's fun. LiCh'i then suggested as a finale the line, by these verses I'd fain sing them Emperor's praise. That's enough, that will do, Li-Wen cried. The rhymes haven't, I admit, been exhausted, but any outside words you might introduce will, if used in a forced sense, be worth nothing at all. While continuing their arguments, the various inmates drew near and kept up a searching criticism for a time. Hsiang-yün was found to be the one among them who had devised the largest number of lines. This is mainly due, they unanimously laughed, to the virtue of that piece of venison. Let's review them line by line as they come, Li-Wen smilingly proposed, but yet as if they formed one continuous poem.
Here's Pao. You asked again. I haven't. The fact is, the knack of pairing sentences.
Pao, you rejoined with a smile. You'd better, therefore, make some allowance for me. There's no such thing as making allowances for you in meeting after meeting. Li-Wen demurred, laughing, that you should again, after that, give out the rhymes in a reckless manner, waste your time, and not show yourself able to put two lines together. You must absolutely bear a penalty today. I just caught a glimpse of the red plum in the LiCh'i monastery, and how charming it is. I meant to have plucked a twig to put in a vase, but so loathsome is the way in which Miao-yu goes on that I won't have anything to do with her. But we'll punish him by making him, for the sake of fun, fetch a twig for us to put in water.
This penalty, they shouted with one accord, is both excellent as well as pleasant.
Pao! Yu himself was no less delighted to carry it into execution, so signifying his readiness to comply with their wishes, he felt desirous to be off at once. It's exceedingly cold outside, Hsiang-yün and Tai-yü simultaneously remarked, so have a glass of warm wine before you go. Hsiang-yün speedily took up the kettle, and Tai-yü handed him a large cup filled to the very brim. Now swallow the wine we give you, Hsiang.
Yoon smiled.
And if you don't bring any plum blossom, we'll inflict a double penalty.
Pao.
You gulp down, hurry, scurry the whole contents of the cup, and started on his errand in the face of the snow. Follow him carefully.
Li-Wen joined the servants. Tai-yü, however, hastened to interfere and make her desist.
There's no such need, she cried. Were anyone to go with him, he'll contrariwise not get the flowers. Yes, she assented, and then went on to direct a waiting maid to bring a vase, in the shape of a beautiful girl with high shoulders, to fill it with water, and get it ready to put the plum blossom in. And when he comes back, she felt induced to add, "We must recite verses on the red plum." "I'll indite a stanza in advance," eagerly exclaimed Hsiang. "Yet no, I no account let you indite any more today." Pao-ch'ai laughed. "You beat every one of us, Hollow. So if we sit with idle hands, there won't be any fun. But by and by we'll find Pao-yü. And as he says that he can't pair antithetical lines, we'll now make him compose a stanza himself. This is a capital idea. But I've got another proposal. As the lines just paired are not sufficient, won't it be well to pick out those who've put together the fewest distiches and make them versify on the red plum blossom?"
An excellent proposal.
Pao-ch'ai, banter laughing. The three girls sing Chou-yen, Li-wen, and LiCh'i failed just now to do justice to their talents. Besides, they are visitors, and as Ancient Senora King Aaron Yunair got the best of us by a good deal, it's only right that none of us should compose anymore, and that trio should only do so. "She, everyone," thereupon retorted, "is also not a very good hand at verses. Let therefore Cousin Shin have a try." "Pao-ch'in have a try. Shall. I had no alternative but to express her acquiescence." "Let the three words read plum blossom," she then suggested, "be used for rhymes. And let each person compose an heptameter stanza. Cousin Aishin to indite on the word red, your elder cousin lie on plum, and Shinner on blossom. If you let Pale, you awfully want to interpose. I won't have it." "I've got a capital theme," Hsiang-yün eagerly remarked. "So let's make him write some."
What theme is it? One and all inquired.
"If we made him,"
Yun resumed, "versify on.
"in search of the Tai-yü, to beg for red plum blossom."
Won't it be full of fun?
"That will be full of zest," the party exclaimed, upon hearing the theme propounded by her. But hardly had they given expression to their approval than they perceived Pao-yü come in, beaming with smiles and glee, and holding with both hands a branch of red plum blossom. The maids hurriedly relieved him of his burden and put the branch in the vase, and the inmates present came over in a body to feast their eyes on it. "Well, may you look at it now, Pao-yü smiled. "You've no idea what an amount of trouble it has cost me." As he uttered these words, an ancient handed him at once another cup of warm wine, and the maids approached and took his wrapper and hat and shook off the snow. But the servant girls attached to their extra articles of clothing, Hsiang in police, the worst for wear, lined with, directed a servant to fill a plate with dishes with red-skinned oranges, yellow things, bade someone take them over to respective quarters, then brought them over like manner, dispatched a domestic with a fur from fox's ribs, Salaiwan having steamed large taros, and to make up 2 coolie oranges, olives, and other like estigen. Hsiang-yün also communicated to Pao, the subject for verses they had decided upon a short while back. But she likewise urged Pao-yü to be quick and accomplish his task. "Dear senior cousin, dear junior cousin,"
pleaded Pao.
"You, let me use my own rhymes. Don't bind me down to any. Go on as you like," they replied with one consent. But conversing the while, they passed the plum blossom under inspection.
This bough of plum blossom was, in fact, only 2 feet in height, but from the side projected a branch crosswise about 2 or 3 feet in length, the small twigs and stalks on which resembled coiled dragons or crouching earthworms, and were either single and trimmed pencil-like, or thick and bushy grove-like. Indeed, their appearance was as if the blossoms spurted cosmetic.
This fragrance put orchids to the blush. So everyone present contributed her quota of praise.
Chou-yen, Li-wen, and Pao-ch'in had little though it was expected. All 3 already finished their lines and each copied them out for herself. So the company began to peruse their compositions, subjoined below, in the order of the 3 words. Red plum blossom. Verses to the red plum blossom. Verses to the red plum blossom by Hsiang-yün. The peach tree has not donned its fragrance yet. The almond is not red. What time it strikes the cold, it's first joyful to smile at the east wind.
When its spirit to the Yuling hath flown, 'tis hard to say, 'tis spring.
The russet clouds across the Lofolai, so in a dreams it's closed. The green petals add grace to a coiffure when painted candles burn. The simple elf, when primed with wine, doth the waning rainbow bestride. Does its appearance speak of a color of ordinary run? Both dark and light fall of their own free will into the ice and snow. The next was the production of Chou-yen, and its burden was to write on the white plum, I'm not disposed, but I'll write on the red, proud of its beauteous charms. 'Tis first to meet the opening drunken eye. On its frost-nipped face are marks, and these consist wholly of blood. Its heart is sore, but no anger it knows. To ashes too it turns. By some mistake, a pill, a fairy, takes and quits her real frame. From the fairyland pool she secret drops and casts off her old form. In spring, both north and south of the river, with splendor it doth bloom. Send word to bees and butterflies that they need not give way to fears. This stanza came next from the pen of the sweet Pao. She in far distant dew the branches grow, but how beauteous the blossom blooms.
The maidens try with profuse show to compete in their spring head dress.
No snow remains on the vacant pavilion and the tortuous rails. Upon the running stream and desolate hills descend the russet clouds. When cold prevails, one can in a still dream follow the last blown fight. The wandering elf roweth in fragrant spring, the boat in the red stream.
In a previous existence, it must sure have been a fairy form.
No doubt need gain arise as to its beauty differing from men. The perusal over, they spent some time in heaping, smiling the while, eulogiums upon the compositions. And they pointed at the last stanza as the best of the lot, which made it evident to Pao-ch'in that Pao-ch'in, albeit the youngest in years, was, on the other hand, the quickest in wits. Tai-yü and Hsiang-yün then filled up a small cup with wine and simultaneously offered their congratulations to Pao-ch'in.
Each of the three stanzas has its beauty, Pao-ch'ai remarked, a smile playing around her lips.
You have daily made a fool of me and are, going to fool her also?
Have you got yours ready? My wand went on to inquire of Pao.
I got them, Pao, you promptly answered. But the moment I read their three stanzas, I once more became so nervous that they quite slipped from my mind. But let me think again. Hsiang-yün, at this reply, fetched a copper poker, and while beating on the hand stove, she laughingly said, I shall go on tattooing. Now, mind if, when the drumming ceases, you haven't accomplished your task, you'll have to bear another fine.
I've already got them. Pao, you rejoined smilingly. Tai, you been picked up a pencil?
Recite them, she smiled, and I'll write them down. Hsiang-yün beat one stroke on the stove.
The first tattoo is over, she laughed. I'm ready. Pao.
You smiled. Go on writing. At this, they heard him recite. The wine bottle is not opened. The line is not put into shape. Tai, he noted it down and shaking her head. They begin very smoothly, she said as she smiled. He quit. Yun again urged. Yun again urged. How, you laughingly continued. To fairyland I speed to seek for spring, and the 12th moon to find. Tai. You and him.
Yun both nodded.
It's rather good, they smiled. Pao, you resumed, saying, I will not beg the high god for a bottle of the healing, but pray Hsiang-yün to give me some plum bloom beyond the rail. Tai, you jotted the lines down and wagged her head to and fro. They're ingenious, that's all, she observed. Hsiang-yün gave another rap with her hand. You, thereupon smilingly added,
I come into the world and, in the cold, I pick out some red snow.
I leave the dusty sphere and speed to pluck the fragrant purple clouds. I bring a jagged branch, but who in pity sings my shoulders thin? On my clothes still sticketh the moss from yon Buddhistic court. As soon as Tai had done writing, Hsiang-yün and the rest of the company began to discuss the merits of the verses. But they then saw several servant maids rush in, shouting, Our venerable mistress has come. One and all hurried out with all dispatch to meet her. How comes it that she is in such good cheer? Everyone also laughed. Speaking a while, they discerned, at a great distance, their grandmother Chia seated, enveloped in a capacious wrapper and rolled up in a warm hood lined with squirrel fur, in a small bamboo sedan chair with an open green silk glazed umbrella in her hand. Yuan Yang, and some other girls, mustering in all 5 or 6, held each an umbrella and pressed around the chair as they advanced. Lai Wan and her companions went up to them with hasty step, but Dowager Lady Chia directed the servants to make them stop, explaining that it would be quite enough if they stood where they were. On her approach, old Lady Chia smiled. "I've given," she observed. "You're Madame Wang, and that girl Fang the slip and come. Who did so? Where was the ground? For me, I'm seated in this, so it doesn't matter. But you mustn't let those ladies trudge in the snow."
The various followers rushed forward to take her wrapper.
And to support her,
And as they did so, they expressed their acquiescence. As soon as she got indoors, old lady, Chia was the first to exclaim with a beaming face, "What beautiful plum blossom! You well know how to make merry, but I too won't let you off." But in the course of her remarks, Lai Wan quickly gave orders to a domestic to fetch a large wolfskin rug and to spread it in the center, so Dowager Lady Chia made herself comfortable on it. "Just go on as before with your romping and joking, drinking and eating." She then laughed. "As the days are so short, I did not venture to have a midday siesta. After therefore playing at dominoes for a time, I bethought myself of you people and likewise came to join the fun." Leyland Slim also presented her hand stove, while Shun brought an extra set of cups and chopsticks, and filling with her own hands a cup with warm wine, she handed it to her grandmother Chia.
Old Lady Chia swallowed a sip.
"What's there in that dish?"
She afterwards inquired.
The various inmates hurriedly carried it over to her and explained that they were pickled quails. "These won't hurt me," Dowager Lady Chia said, "so cut off a piece of the leg and give it to me."
yes, promptly acquiesced Lai Wan, and asking for water, she washed her hands and then came in.
"Person to carve the quail." "Sit down again," Dowager Lady Chia said, pressing them, and go on with your chatting and laughing. "Let me hear you and feel happy. Just you also seat yourself," continuing, she remarked to Lai Wan, "and behave as if I were not here. If you do so, well and good. Otherwise, I shall take myself off at once." But it was only when they heard how persistent she was in her solicitations that they all resumed the seats, which accorded with their age, with the exception of Li Wan, who moved to the furthest side. "What were you playing at?"
Old Lady Chia thereupon asked.
"We were writing verses," answered the whole party. "Wouldn't it be well for those who are up to poetry," Dowager Lady Chia suggested, "to devise a few puns for lanterns so that the whole lot of us should be able to have some fun in the first moon?" With one voice they expressed their approval. But after they adjusted for a little time, "It's damp in here," Old Lady Chia said, "so don't you sit long, for mind you might be catching cold. Where it's nice and warm is in your cousin Quarta's over there. So let's all go and see how she's getting on with her painting, and whether it will be ready or not by the end of the year. How could it be completed by the close of the year?"
They smiled. She could only, we fancy, get it ready by the Dragon Boat Festival next year.
"This is dreadful," Old Lady Chia exclaimed. "Why, she's really wasted more labor on it than would have been actually required to lay out this garden." With these words still on her lips, she ensconced herself again in the bamboo sedan, and closed in or followed by the whole company, she repaired to the Lotus Fragrance Arbor, where they got into a narrow passage, flanked on the east as well as the west, with doors from which they could cross the street. Over these doorways, on the inside as well as outside, were inserted alike tablets made of stone. The door they went in by, on this occasion, lay on the west. On the tablet facing outwards were cut out the 2 words representing "penetrating into the clouds." On that inside were engraved the 2 characters meaning "crossing to the moon." On their arrival at the hall, they walked in by the main entrance, which looked towards the south. Dowager Lady Chia then alighted from her chair. Chou-yen had already made her appearance out of doors to welcome her. So, taking the inner covered passage, they passed over to the other side and reached LiCh'i's bedroom, on the doorposts of which figured the 3 words, warm fragrance oil. Several servants were at once at hand, and no sooner had they raised the red woolen portiere than a soft fragrance wafted itself into their faces. The various inmates stepped into the room.
Old Lady Chia, however, did not take a seat but simply inquired where the painting was.
The weather is the glue. Who's that? Were I too, and I therefore so bitterly cold. She consequently explained, smiling, that property is mainly to coagulate, cannot be moistened. So I feared have gone on with the painting. It wouldn't be worth looking at. Put it away. I must have it by the close of the year. Dowager Lady Chia laughed, so don't idle your time away. Produce it at once and go on painting for me as quick as you can. But scarcely had she concluded her remark than she unexpectedly perceived Lady Feng arrive, smirking and laughing, with a purple pelisse lined with deer fur thrown over her shoulders. She shouted. You don't even so much as let anyone know today, but sneak over stealthily. I had a good hunt for you. When old Lady Chia saw her join them, she felt filled with delight. I was afraid, she rejoined, that you'd be feeling cold.
That's why I didn't allow anyone to tell you. You're really as sharp as a spirit to have. I've last been able to trace my whereabouts. But according to strict etiquette, you shouldn't show filial piety to such a degree. Is it out of any
idea of filial piety that I came after you? Not at all, Lady Feng added with a laugh. But when I got to your place, worthy senior, I found everything so quiet that not even the caw of a crow could be heard. And when I asked the young maids where you'd gone, they wouldn't let me come and search in the garden. So I began to give way to surmises. Suddenly also arrived 2 or 3 nuns. And then at length I jumped at the conclusion that these women must have come to bring their yearly prayers or to ask for their annual or incense allowance, and that with the amount of things you also, venerable ancestor, have to do for the end of the year, you had for certain got out of the way of your debts. Speedily, therefore, I inquired of the nuns what it was that brought them there, and for a fact there was no mistake in my surmises. So, promptly issuing the annual allowances to them, I now come to report to you, worthy senior, that your creditors have gone and that there's no need for you to skulk away. But I've had some tender pheasant prepared, so please come and have your evening meal. For if you delay any longer, it will get quite stale. As she spoke, everybody burst out laughing. But Lady Feng did not allow any time to Dowager Lady Chia to pass any observations, but forthwith directed the servants to bring the chair over. Old Lady Chia then smilingly laid hold of Lady Feng's hand and got again into her chair. But she took along with her the whole company of relatives for a chat and a laugh. Upon issuing out of the gate on the east side of the narrow passage, the 4 quarters presented to their gaze the appearance of being adorned with powder and inlaid with silver. Unawares, they caught sight of Pao-ch'in in a duck-down cloak, waiting at a distance at the back of the hill slope, while behind her stood a maid holding a vase full of red plum blossoms. Strange enough, they all exclaimed laughingly, 2 of us were missing. But she's waiting over there. She's also been after some plum blossom.
Just look? Dowager Lady Chia eagerly cried out joyfully.
That human creature has been put there to match with the snow-covered hill. But with that
costume and the plum blossom at the back of her, to what does she bear a resemblance? She resembles one and all smiles, Chou-yen. She's beautiful snow picture suspended in your apartment's venerable ancestor.
Is there in that picture any such costume? Old Lady Chia demurred, nodding her
head and smiling. What's more, the persons represented in it could never be so pretty. Hardly had this remark dropped from her mouth than she discerned someone else, clad in a deep red woolen cloak, appear to view at the back of Pao-ch'ai. What other girl is that? Dowager Lady Chia asked. We girls are all here, they laughingly answered. That's Pao.
Yeah.
My eyes, old Lady Chia smiled, are getting dimmer and dimmer. So saying, they drew near, and of course they turned out to be Pao. You and Pao-ch'in. I've just been again to the Legacy Monastery, Pao. You smiled to Pao. Hi, you and his other cousins, and meow you gave me for each of you a twig of plum blossom. I've already sent a servant to take them over. Many thanks for the trouble you've been put to, they with one voice replied. But speaking the while, they sallied out of the garden gate and repaired to their grandmother Chia's suite of apartments. Their meal over, they joined in a further chat and laugh, when unexpectedly they saw Mrs. Chou-yen also arrive. With all this snow, she observed, I haven't been over the whole day to see how you venerable senior were getting on. You couldn't have been in a good sort of mood to say, for you should have gone and seen the snow. I'm not in a good mood, old lady Chia exclaimed. I went and looked up these young ladies and had a romp with them for a time.
Last night, Mrs.
Sui smiled. I was thinking of getting from our Madame Wang today the loan of the garden for the nonsense spreading 2 tables with our main wine, and inviting you, worthy senior, to enjoy the snow. But as I saw that you were having a rest, and I heard at an early hour that Pao-ch'in had said that you were not in a joyful frame of mind, I did not, in consequence, presume to come and disturb you today. But had I known sooner the real state of affairs, I would have felt it my bounden duty to have asked you round. This is, rejoined Dowager Lady Chia with a smile, only the first fall of snow in the 10th moon. We'll have, after this, plenty of snowy days, so there will be ample time to put your ladyship to wasteful expense. Verily, in that case, Mrs. Sui laughingly added, my filial intentions may well be looked upon as having been accomplished. Mrs. Hsiang interposed Lady Feng, smiling. Mind you, don't forget it, but you might as well weigh 50 taels this very moment and hand them over to me to keep until the first fall of snow, when I can get everything ready for the banquet. In this way, you will neither have anything to bother you, aunt, nor will you have a chance of forgetting. Well, since that be so, old lady,
Chia remarked with a laugh, your ladyship had better give her 50 taels, and I'll share it with her.
each one of us taking 25 taels. And on any day it might snow, I'll pretend I don't feel in proper trim and let it slip by. You'll have thus still less occasion to trouble yourself, and I and Lady Feng will reap a substantial benefit.
Lady Feng clapped her hand.
An excellent idea, she laughed. This quite falls in with my views. The whole company were much amused. Sure, Dowager Lady Chia laughingly ejaculated. You bare-faced thing. You're like a snake which avails itself of the rod with which it is being beaten to crawl up and do harm. You don't try to convince us that it properly devolves upon us as Mrs. Hushu is our guest and receives such poor treatment in our household to invite her. For with what right could we subject her ladyship to any reckless outlay?
But you have the impudence of impressing upon our minds to insist upon the payment.
In advance of 50 taels, are you really not thoroughly ashamed of yourself? Oh, worthy senior, Lady Feng laughed. You're most sharp-sighted. You try to see whether Mrs. Shui will be soft enough to produce 50 taels for you to share with me, but fancying now that it's of no avail, you turn around and begin to rate me by coming out with all these grand words. I won't, however, take any money from you, Mrs. Hushu. Fact, contribute some on your ladyship's account, and when I get the banquet ready and invite you, venerable ancestor, to come and partake of it, I'll also wrap 50 taels in a piece of paper and dutifully present them to you as a penalty for my officious interference in matters that don't concern me. Will this be all right or not? Before these words were brought to a close, the various inmates were so convulsed with hearty laughter that they reeled over on the stove. Couch. Dowager Lady Chia then went on to explain how much nicer Pao-ch'in was, plucking plum blossom in the snow than the very picture itself. And she next minutely inquired what the year, moon, day, and hour of her birth were, and how things were getting on in her home. Mrs. Shui conjectured that the object she had in mind was, in all probability, to seek a partner for her.
In the secret recesses of her heart, Mrs. Hushu on this account fell in also with her views.
Pao-ch'in had, however, already been promised in marriage to the Mei family, But as Dowager Lady Chia had made, as yet, no open allusion to her intentions, Mrs. Zoe did not think it nice on her part to come out with any definite statement, and she accordingly observed to old Lady Chia in a vague sort of way. What a pity it is that this girl should have had so little good fortune as to lose her father the year before last. But ever since her youth up, she has seen much of the world, for she has been with her parent to every place of note. Her father was a man fond of pleasure, and as he had business in every direction, he took his family along with him.
After tarrying in this province for a whole year, he would next year again go to that
Province, and spend half a year roaming about it everywhere. Hence it is that he had visited 5 or 6/10 of the whole empire. The other year, when they were here, he engaged her to the son of the Hanlan-mi.
But as it happened, her father died the year after, and here is her mother too now,
ailing from a superfluity of phlegm.
Lady Feng gave her no time to complete what she meant to say.
Hi!
She exclaimed, stamping her foot.
What you say isn't opportune. I was about to act as a go-between. But is she too already engaged? For whom did you mean to act as go-between?
Old Lady Chia smiled.
My dear ancestor, Lady Feng remarked, don't concern yourself about it. I had determined in my mind that those two would make a suitable match. But as she has now long ago been promised to someone, it would be of no use were I even to speak out.
Isn't better that I should hold my peace and
Drop the whole thing. Dowager Lady Chia herself was cognizant of Lady Feng's purpose, so upon hearing that she already had a suitor, she at once desisted from making any further reference to the subject. The whole company then continued another chat on irrelevant matters for a time, after which they broke up. Nothing of any interest transpired the whole night. The next day, the snowy weather had cleared up. After breakfast, her grandmother Chia again pressed Hsiang-yün. You should go on, she said, with your painting, irrespective of cold or heat. If you can't absolutely finish it by the end of the year, it won't much matter. The main thing is that you must at once introduce an Chin-or-han the maid with the plum blossom, as we saw them yesterday, in strict accordance with the original and without the least discrepancy of so much as a stroke. Hsiang-yün listened to her and felt it her duty to signify her assent, in spite of the task being no easy one for her to execute. After a time, a number of her relatives came in a body to watch the progress of the painting. But they discovered Hsiang plunge in a reverie. Let's leave her alone, Lei Wan smilingly observed to them all to proceed with her meditations. We can meanwhile have a chat among ourselves. Yesterday, our worthy senior bade us devise a few lantern conundrums, so when we got home, I tried a few lantern. Hanoner did not turn in, but set to work. I composed a couple on the 4 books, but those 2 girls also managed to put together another pair of them.
We should hear what they're like, they laughingly exclaimed in chorus when they heard what they had done.
Tell them to us first, and let's have a guess. The goddess of mercy has not been handed down by any ancestors.
LiCh'i smiled.
This refers to a passage in the 4 books. In one's conduct, one must press towards the highest benevolence. Hsiang-yün quickly interposed, taking up the thread of the conversation. You should ponder over the meaning of the 3 words implying handing down by ancestors.
Pao-ch'ai smiled.
Before you venture a guess, think again, Lei Wan urged with a smile. I've guessed it. Tai-yü smiled. If, notwithstanding all that benevolence, there be no outward visible sign. That's the line, one and all unanimously exclaimed with a laugh. The whole pond is covered with brush. Well, finds the name of the rush. And Lei Wan proceeded. This must certainly be the cat. Tail rush, hastily again replied Yang. Done. Can this not be right? You've succeeded in guessing it? Lei Wan smiled. Why one's cold runs the stream along the stones, bearing on the name of a man of old. Ken, Depishan, Tao, Yes, answered Lei Wan. Shh, ears is the character, young, glow. It refers to a single word, the Yuan resumed. The party endeavored for a long time to hit upon the solution.
The meaning of this is certainly deep, Pao-ch'in put in. I wonder whether it's the character.
Oh, see, put in. I wonder whether it's the character. Hua, lower in the combination. What? Jatation. They smell. What has a glowworm to do with flowers? One and all observed. It's capital Tai, he ventured with a smile. Is it a glow? Worm transformed from plants. The company grasped the sense, and laughing the while, they with one consent shouted out, splendid. All these are, I admit, good. Ha!
Chou remarked.
But they won't suit our venerable senior's taste. Won't it be better, therefore, to compose a few on some simple objects, some which all of us, whether polished or unpolished, may be able to enjoy? Yes, they all replied. We should also think of some simple ones on ordinary objects. I've devised one on the Xiang-yün meter. Hsiang-yün pursued after some reflection, but it's really on an ordinary object. So try and guess it. Saying this, she forthwith went on to recite the creeks and valleys it leaves, traveling the world it performs. In truth, how funny it is, but renown and gain are still vain. Ever hard behind it is its fate. A conundrum. None of those present could fathom what it could be. After protracted thought, some made a guess by saying it was a bonze. Others maintained that it was a Taoist priest. Others again divined that it was a marionette. All your guesses are wrong, How? You chimed in after considerable reflection. I've got it. It must for a certainty be a performing monkey. That's really it. You laughed. The last part is all right. The first part is all right. How do you explain the last line? What performing monkey, he sang? Yun asked, has not had its tail cut off. Hearing this, they exploded into a fit of merriment. Even they argued the very riddles she improvises are perverse and strange. Mrs. Hishu mentioned yesterday that you, Cousin Chin, had seen much of the world, Lai Wan put in, and that you had also gone about a good deal. It's for you, therefore, to try your hand at a few conundrums. What's more, your poetry, too, is good. So why shouldn't you indite a few for us to guess? Pao-ch'in, at this proposal, nodded her head, and while repressing a smile, she went off by herself to give way to thought. Pao-ch'ai then also gave out this riddle. Carved sandal and cut cedar rise layer upon layer. Have they been piled and fashioned by workmen of skill? In the mid-heavens, it's true, both wind and rain fleet by. But can one hear the tingling of the Buddhist bell? While they were giving their mind to guessing what it could be, Pao-yü recited, both from the heavens and from the earth it's indistinct to view.
What time the Lang Ya feast goes past, then mind you take
Great care. When the ones there she catch in the crane's message don't look up. It is a splendid thing to turn and breathe towards the vault of heaven. A kite. Next added. Really a famous steed beer with bridle ear restrained, for the city it speeds. The lope it skirts, hell, fierce it looks. The master gives the word, and wind and clouds begin to move. On the fishbacks in the 3 isles that only makes a name, a rotating lantern. And Shun had also one that she felt disposed to tell them, but just as she was about to open her lips, Pao-ch'in walked up to them. The relics of various places I've seen since my youth, she smiled, are not few. So I've now selected 10 places of historic interest, on which I've composed 10 odes, treating of antiquities. The verses may possibly be coarse, but they bear upon things of the past and secretly refer as well to 10 commonplace articles. So cousins, please try and guess them. This is ingenious, they exclaimed in chorus when they heard the result of her labor. Why not write them out and let us have a look at them? But reader, peruse the next chapter if you want to learn what follows.